It was a cold November morning in the Atacama Desert of northern Chile. The sky was clear, filled with millions of stars, so bright that it almost looked like a painting. Inside a small observatory on top of a lonely hill, Dr. Amira Solberg sat with a cup of black coffee staring at her computer screen. She was tired. It had been another long night of scanning radio waves from deep space, listening for signals that almost never came. For 10 years she had searched for any sign that someone, somewhere beyond Earth, might be trying to talk. Nothing. Only silence. Until that night, her computer suddenly made a sharp rhythmic beep, a sound she had never heard before. She frowned, adjusted her glasses, and leaned closer to the screen. A line of repeating spikes appeared on the graph. It wasn't random noise. It was too perfect, too clean, too regular. Each pulse came exactly 4.2 seconds apart every single time. Amira froze for a moment. Her mind raced. Could it be interference? She whispered to herself. She checked the instruments. Everything was normal. She switched antennas. The pattern was still there. She felt her heartbeat quicken. Signals like this didn't just happen by accident. There was something in that rhythm, something intentional. She saved the data and ran a cross-check against known cosmic sources. Not a pulsar, not a quasar, not a satellite. It didn't match anything. Her hands trembled slightly as she sent a quick message to her assistant, Luis, who was in another lab nearby. Luis, come here now. You need to see this. When he arrived, rubbing sleep from his eyes, Amira pointed to the screen. Look, it's been repeating for 20 minutes straight. Luis stared at the monitor, then at her. It's patterned, he said slowly. This isn't background radiation. They both stood there in silence, listening to the repeating beeps echo from the speakers. Every pulse sounded like a heartbeat from space. Amira and Luis spent the next few hours checking and rechecking every possible source of error. They turned off the receiver, turned it back on, rotated the dish, changed the frequency. The signal didn't go away. It followed them. It was coming from deep space, from a star system about 13 light-years away, one that astronomers had never studied closely before. By morning, Amira's eyes were red, but she couldn't stop. She had sent her findings to 2 other observatories, one in Australia and one in Canada, asking them to confirm the same signal. For hours she waited, pacing the floor, drinking more coffee than she should have. Finally her phone buzzed. A message from the Australian team. Confirmed. Same pattern, same frequency. Minutes later, another from Canada. We're hearing it too. Amira sat down, her body shaking slightly. It was real. It wasn't interference. It wasn't a mistake. For the first time in human history, a signal, an intentional structured signal, had come from beyond Earth. By noon, word had quietly spread among the scientific community. Researchers from NASA, ESA, and other space agencies began calling her, asking for the raw data. The news hadn't reached the public yet, but it was only a matter of time. Everyone who saw the signal agreed. It was like nothing they had ever recorded before. That night, Amira went outside the observatory. The desert air was cool and the stars above seemed brighter than usual. She looked up, feeling both small and powerful at the same time. Somewhere out there, far beyond what the human eye could see, someone, or something, had sent a message. A message that had traveled across the darkness of space just to be heard here on Earth. She wondered what it meant. Was it a greeting? A warning? Or a desperate cry for help? The pattern was simple, almost too simple, like the first knock on a closed door. She couldn't stop thinking about it. For years, people had laughed at the idea of aliens. They called scientists like her dreamers, chasing ghosts in the sky. But now that ghost had spoken. Within 2 days, the signal leaked online. A technician at a European lab had uploaded a recording to a private forum, and from there it spread like wildfire. News channels around the world broke the story. Alien SOS detected, humanity's first contact. People everywhere reacted differently. Some cheered, some prayed, some panicked. Social media exploded with theories. Some said it was a government experiment gone wrong. Others believed it was the beginning of something historic, proof that we were not alone. At the observatory, things changed overnight. Journalists camped outside the gates. Scientists from all over the world called Amira's team, offering to help decode the signal. The Chilean government sent security officers to guard the site. Amira, who had always worked in quiet isolation, now found herself at the center of the biggest discovery in human history. But with the attention came doubt. A few experts on live television claimed the signal could be a clever hoax, maybe some hacker faking data, or a secret satellite transmission. Amira ignored the noise. She trusted what she saw. The precision of the signal was beyond anything random. It was too deliberate, too urgent. Late one night, she sat in front of her computer listening to the soft beeps once more. They came one after another, steady, unchanging. There was something haunting about them, like someone lost calling again and again hoping someone would answer. Luis walked in quietly, carrying a notebook. "You've been here all day," he said. She nodded without looking up. "Listen to it," she said. "Doesn't it sound like asking for help?" He frowned. "Help? From who?" "From us," she whispered. He didn't reply. The idea was too big, too strange. Yet deep down, he felt it too. By the end of the week, international observatories had officially confirmed the signal's existence. Scientists called it the Luyten message, named after the star it came from. Luyten b, a red dwarf system not far from Earth. Governments held emergency meetings. The United Nations organized a special session to discuss what the world should do next. But amid the global excitement, Amira stayed focused on the data. She noticed tiny variations in the signal strength, like a code hidden within the rhythm. It wasn't just a repeating pattern anymore. It was changing, as if whoever was sending it knew someone had finally heard them. That realization filled her with both wonder and fear. What if this wasn't a greeting at all? What if it truly was an SOS? A distress call from a civilization in trouble? If so, what kind of danger could reach across space like that? Amira recorded a note in her journal that night. "The signal feels alive. It's not static. It's speaking, just not in a way we understand yet." The next morning, she woke to find her name all over the news. She didn't care about fame. All she wanted was answers. Her email was flooded with messages from strangers, some congratulating her, others begging her to stop, warning that humans should not answer. Outside, crowds gathered at the observatory fence holding signs. Some said, "Welcome to Earth." Others said, "Don't reply." Amira didn't go out to see them. She stayed in her lab, surrounded by blinking screens and the endless hum of machines. The signal was still coming, steady, constant, unstoppable. It had become a part of her life now, like a second heartbeat. As she stared at the graphs on her monitor, a thought crossed her mind. Maybe this was how it had always begun. One message, one pulse, one scientist awake at night, wondering if someone far away was doing the same thing, looking up at their sky and waiting for an answer. The desert outside was silent, but in that silence, Amira felt the weight of a universe watching. Somewhere, light years away, a voice had whispered across the void, and she had heard it. And though no one on Earth yet knew what it meant, everyone could feel that something had changed forever. The world was no longer just Earth and its people. The universe had finally spoken, and it had chosen to speak to her. The days after the signal's discovery were like a storm that never stopped. The world had gone from quiet disbelief to complete chaos in less than a week. News channels ran the story every hour, showing the same clip of the strange, repeating beeps. Some called it the voice from the stars, while others called it the alien SOS. No one truly knew what it was, but everyone had an opinion. In Chile, the small observatory where Dr. Amira Solberg worked had turned into a fortress. Police cars guarded the entrance. Reporters camped outside, shouting questions every time someone walked by. Scientists from different countries arrived every day, carrying laptops, drives, and thick folders of data. The air buzzed with excitement, confusion, and fear. Amira barely slept. She had become the face of the discovery. Every hour, someone wanted her opinion. Reporters, government officials, even priests and philosophers. But she didn't care about interviews or fame. She cared about the message. Somewhere in that rhythm, that endless chain of pulses, she felt there was something waiting to be understood. Inside the observatory's control room, she sat surrounded by screens. Graphs scrolled endlessly, each showing the same repeating signal. She had listened to it so many times that the pattern lived in her head even when she closed her eyes. It was steady, mechanical, but not random. There was purpose in it. One afternoon, her assistant Luis brought her food, but she barely touched it. "You need to eat," he said softly. She shook her head. "Later. I think there's a second layer in the signal. Look here." She pointed to a faint fluctuation in the data. It's almost invisible, but it repeats every 1024 pulses. It's like a heartbeat within a heartbeat, Louise frowned. You mean there's more information hidden inside? Yes, she said. It's not just a call. It's coded. That evening, Amira shared her findings with a small group of international scientists during an online meeting. The screen showed faces from all over the world: America, India, Japan, Germany, and Russia. Everyone looked tired but fascinated. Dr. Kwan from Seoul said, "If what you're saying is true, then this signal may be intelligent in structure. It could be a language or mathematics," said another voice, Professor Vasquez from Spain. "If it's a distress signal, numbers would be the most logical way to communicate across species." They decided to form a global research team to study it together. Within days, the United Nations officially created Project Echo, a joint effort involving hundreds of scientists, engineers, and linguists from over 40 countries. The project's main goal was simple: decode the signal and understand its message. For the first time in human history, the world worked as one. Old enemies became partners. Military satellites were redirected to monitor the star system where the signal came from. Supercomputers were used to analyze every pulse. Billionaires offered funding. Governments shared secret data. Humanity had one common goal: to understand who was calling and why. But as cooperation grew, so did fear. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some said the signal was a trap. Others claimed it was a warning about an upcoming disaster. On social media, conspiracy theories exploded. The aliens are coming, the world will end, NASA is hiding the truth. Amira tried to stay focused, but the noise was overwhelming. Every morning she received hundreds of emails, some from curious students, some from religious leaders, and some filled with hate. People accused her of lying or serving powerful governments. She ignored it all. The only thing that mattered was decoding the truth. Weeks passed. Project Echo's headquarters in Geneva became the center of global attention. Amira and Luis were flown there along with other scientists. When she entered the massive glass building for the first time, she was speechless. Screens covered every wall, showing star maps, radio frequencies, and streams of binary code. Teams worked around the clock, sleeping on couches and eating in shifts. One evening, Amira was walking through the main hall when she saw something that stopped her. A massive display showed the signal pattern, lines of light pulsing in rhythm. Around it, people from every background were working together: physicists, linguists, mathematicians, computer experts, all united by one mystery. She felt proud but also uneasy. The signal seemed stronger now, as if it had grown aware that someone was listening. That night, the Project Echo team discovered something incredible. A data scientist from India named Rajan found that the pulses formed mathematical sequences: prime numbers, Fibonacci patterns, and geometric ratios. These weren't random natural signals. They were signs of intelligence. It was as if someone was using the universal language of math to say, "We exist." When the discovery was announced, the world held its breath. The message wasn't just a noise anymore. It was proof. Proof that the universe had other voices. Proof that humanity wasn't alone. The next morning, Amira woke up to find her name on every headline: Dr. Amira Solberg and Team Crack Alien Code. But she didn't feel victorious. She felt heavier, as if the truth had only raised bigger questions. During a press conference, a reporter asked her, "Doctor, do you think the signal is friendly or dangerous?" Amira paused before answering. "I think it's desperate," she said quietly. "It's not a threat. It's a cry for help." Her words spread everywhere. "Cry for help" became the phrase on every television screen. People began to wonder, if it was truly an SOS, then who or what was in trouble? And what kind of disaster could reach across space? Governments began to take the signal more seriously. The United States, Russia, and China held private meetings. Military satellites were repositioned. Some believed the message could contain hidden technology, something valuable or dangerous. The excitement of scientific discovery slowly turned into political tension. Amira hated it. She hadn't discovered this signal for war or power. To her, it was about connection, about finding proof that humanity was part of something larger. But the world didn't always see it that way. Inside Project Echo, the work continued day and night. They built advanced algorithms to decode deeper layers of the transmission. The more they uncovered, the more mysterious it became. The pulses contained not only mathematical patterns but also frequency shifts, almost like musical notes. Some scientists thought it might be a kind of sound-based language like singing or sonar. One evening after hours of analysis, Luis looked up from his computer. "Amira," he said, "you should hear this." He pressed a button and the speakers played a low echoing hum. The sound rose and fell in smooth waves, haunting and strange. It didn't sound mechanical. It sounded alive. For a moment everyone in the room went silent. The signal wasn't just a pattern anymore. It had emotion in it. It was like listening to someone whisper across the stars. As days turned into weeks, Amira started to dream about the sound. Sometimes it felt like a song calling her. Sometimes it felt like a warning. She couldn't tell which. Meanwhile, public reaction kept growing. People gathered in city squares to listen to the voice from space. Religious leaders declared it a sign from God. Protesters demanded the government stop decoding the signal, saying it could bring danger to Earth. Fear and faith mixed together, creating a strange new kind of global energy. One night, Amira stood on the balcony of her hotel in Geneva, looking at the city lights below. She thought about all the people working with her, the sleepless scientists, the frightened citizens, the dreamers watching the stars. For the first time, humanity was truly united, not by war or greed, but by curiosity and hope. But unity didn't last long. Countries began arguing over what to do next. Some wanted to send a reply immediately, while others warned that it was too risky. What if answering the message brought danger? What if the sender wasn't friendly? Amira believed they should listen first, not rush. She wanted to understand the message completely before taking any step. "You don't answer a cry for help until you know where it's coming from," she told the team. Then one day something changed. A small group of researchers found a strange pattern hidden deep in the signal, a set of numerical coordinates. At first they thought it referred to the star's location, but when they plotted it on a map, their jaws dropped. The coordinates didn't point into deep space. They pointed back toward Earth's own orbit. It made no sense. How could a signal from a distant star contain information about Earth's space neighborhood? Unless the sender already knew about us. The discovery shook everyone in Project Echo. If those coordinates were real, it meant there might be something, or someone, already near Earth, waiting. That night, as the team gathered around the big screen, the room was filled with silence. Amira stared at the coordinates, feeling her skin crawl. For the first time since hearing the signal, she felt true fear. "What if the SOS isn't coming to Earth?" she whispered. "What if it's coming from it?" No one answered. The room remained silent except for the faint hum of computers and the echo of the signal still playing in the background. Steady, endless, like a voice that refused to die. And somewhere out there, beyond the clouds and stars, something or someone was still calling. The discovery of the coordinates changed everything. What had begun as a scientific mystery was now something far more serious. Those numbers hidden deep inside the alien signal pointed not to a faraway star, but to a spot in space close to Earth itself, somewhere near the moon's dark side. When Amira saw the coordinates appear on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. She double-checked them again and again, but they never changed. The message wasn't leading humanity out into the stars. It was leading them home. The next few days inside Project Echo's headquarters were filled with confusion and fear. Scientists argued for hours. Some said the coordinates were just a coincidence or an error in the decoding process. Others believed the signal was deliberately guiding them toward something near Earth. Amira listened quietly, her mind racing. She couldn't explain why, but she felt certain the coordinates meant something real. It was as if the sender had left a breadcrumb trail for humanity to follow. Soon, the world's governments took control. Military space agencies began scanning the moon's orbit using advanced telescopes and satellites. Every nation wanted to be the first to find whatever was hiding there. It became a race, not for discovery, but for ownership. What had started as a global collaboration began to break apart under the pressure of power and fear. Amira hated it. She hadn't discovered the signal for politics or fame. She only wanted to understand the truth. But now she watched helplessly as politicians turned her discovery into a competition. Every country sent teams of scientists and space experts to join the search, but none were allowed to share full data with each other. The unity that Project Echo had once built was slowly fading. Meanwhile, the media went wild. News stations broadcast constant updates, showing maps of the moon with flashing red circles where the mysterious coordinates pointed. People around the world stayed awake at night, waiting for the next update. Some believed the coordinates would lead to an alien spaceship. Others said it might be a warning beacon. There were even people who thought the signal came from the future, a message from humanity itself. Amira tried to block out the noise and focus on her research. She spent hours staring at the decoded data, trying to see patterns no one else could. The signal was still coming, repeating the same pulse, but now it seemed slightly different, stronger, more focused. It was as if whoever had sent it knew that someone had finally found the hidden coordinates. One night, while reviewing data with Luis, Amira noticed something strange. The signal's strength fluctuated in sync with the Earth's rotation. "It's adjusting," she whispered. "It's reacting to us." Luis looked confused. "Reacting? You mean it knows we're listening?" Amira nodded slowly. "Maybe it does. Maybe it's been waiting for someone to hear it all along." The next morning, a report came in from a European space agency. Their satellites had detected something unusual near the coordinates. A faint metallic reflection, moving slowly in orbit near the dark side of the moon. It wasn't a natural rock or space debris. It was smooth, geometric, and larger than any known satellite. The discovery sent shockwaves across the world. Governments called emergency meetings. Space agencies began planning missions to reach the object. Everyone wanted to know what it was. Was it a ship? A probe? A trap? Theories filled the internet. For the first time in history, people looked up at the moon not just as a symbol of beauty, but as a place where something unknown was waiting. Amira was invited to a private meeting with the UN Science Council. The room was filled with generals, scientists, and political leaders. On a large screen behind them was an image of the mysterious object, blurry but real. It had a circular shape, almost like a capsule, and it reflected sunlight faintly. A general spoke first. "Dr. Solberg, your discovery started this. We want your opinion. Do you believe this object is connected to the signal?" Amira hesitated for a moment. "Yes," she said finally. "I think whoever sent that message wanted us to find this." The room was silent. Someone asked, "Do you believe it's alien technology?" Amira took a deep breath. "I don't know. But it's not natural. It's built." That answer changed everything. Within hours, several countries announced plans to send spacecraft to investigate. Private companies joined the race too. Billionaires offered to fund missions if they could be part of history. The space around Earth suddenly became crowded with satellites and probes, all pointing toward one mysterious target, the object hidden behind the moon. The media called it the messenger. The name spread quickly. Everyone wanted to see what the messenger really was. Weeks passed as humanity prepared to reach it. The world watched as spacecraft after spacecraft launched toward the moon. Tension grew with each passing day. People prayed, argued, and dreamed about what would happen next. Would humanity finally meet another civilization? Or would they discover something terrifying? Amira stayed in Geneva, monitoring every bit of incoming data. She didn't care who reached it first. She only wanted the truth. She often sat by the window at night, staring at the sky. She thought about all the people before her, scientists, dreamers, philosophers, who had looked up and wondered if anyone else was out there. Now that question was finally being answered. One evening, as she was analyzing the newest data, Luis came running into her office. "They found it!" he shouted, his voice shaking with excitement. The private team from Orbital X, they reached the coordinates. Amira jumped to her feet. What did they find? Luis handed her a tablet. On the screen was a live feed from space. The camera showed a dark, silent object slowly turning near the moon's shadow. It looked old, covered in dust and tiny meteoroid scars. But its shape was unmistakable, not a natural rock. It was a capsule. The feed zoomed in, revealing strange markings along the surface, symbols or writing that looked almost human. Amira's breath caught in her throat. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Those patterns, they look familiar." The team on Earth waited as the spacecraft's robotic arm reached out to touch the object. The contact caused a faint vibration, and suddenly, a weak signal burst from the capsule, the same pulse pattern that Amira had first discovered months ago. The room filled with gasps. It was the same alien SOS, only now it was louder, clearer, and closer than ever before. For a few seconds, everyone on Earth seemed to hold their breath. The capsule slowly rotated, revealing a metal plate with engraved letters. At first, the camera's light made it hard to read, but as it focused, the words became clear. They were in English. The letters spelled, "Humanity will remember." The control room fell silent. No one spoke. Amira stared at the screen, her eyes wide with disbelief. "It's not alien," she said softly. "It's us." The realization hit everyone like a shockwave. The alien SOS wasn't from another world. It was a message from humanity itself. But how and why? As engineers studied the capsule's material, they found it was made from alloys identical to those used in human space missions. It was old, possibly decades or even centuries old, but still intact. Inside the capsule were fragments of data chips, DNA samples, and audio recordings that seemed to come from Earth. It was then that a scientist from NASA remembered something, an old mission that had vanished long ago. In the early 21st century, there had been a private space expedition called Helios 1, a colony ship meant to explore the outer solar system. It had disappeared shortly after launch, lost in deep space. No one had ever found it or its crew. Many had assumed it was destroyed, but now, it seemed Helios 1 had survived long enough to send back one final message, an SOS that took decades to reach Earth. The capsule was their cry for help. Drifting through space, finally returning home, Amira felt tears fill her eyes. All this time, humanity had been searching for life beyond the stars, only to discover its own lost voice echoing back. The galaxy hadn't sent a message to us. We had sent one to ourselves. As news of the discovery spread, the world was stunned. People who had spent months arguing about aliens now sat in silence, realizing the truth was both heartbreaking and beautiful. The message that had united, divided, and terrified humanity was not a threat, but a memory, a reminder of human courage and failure. In the days that followed, Amira watched as the capsule was carefully brought back to Earth. Scientists studied it day and night. Inside one of the recovered data chips, they found a short audio clip, a human voice, weak but clear, saying, "If anyone hears this, tell them we tried." Those words broke hearts around the world. It was proof that the Helios 1 crew had known they would not survive. Yet they had still sent their message into the darkness, hoping someone someday would hear them. Amira listened to the recording over and over. Each time she felt a deep ache in her chest. The universe hadn't given Earth a message from strangers. It had given them a mirror. The alien SOS was the echo of humanity's own loneliness. As she stood one night under the same stars where the signal had once come from, Amira whispered softly, "We found you. We heard you." And somewhere in that vast silence of space, it felt as if the echo whispered back. The world waited as the mysterious capsule was brought back from space. Every television screen, every phone, every news channel showed the same image. A dark, metallic object slowly being lowered onto a platform inside a secure lab. People watched from their homes with wide eyes, holding their breath. For months, the alien SOS had ruled the world's imagination, but now it was here on Earth, and the truth was about to be revealed. Amira Solberg stood behind a thick glass wall wearing a white lab coat and gloves. Her heart was pounding. She had spent her whole life searching for signs of other life in the universe, and now, what she had found was something even stranger. The capsule wasn't an alien artifact. It was something human. Or at least it looked that way. The room was filled with scientists, engineers, and government officials. Robots slowly removed layers of dust and space debris from the object. Underneath the gray surface, they found smooth metal with faint lines carved into it, symbols that looked like letters, numbers, and DNA patterns. Every small discovery sent a wave of murmurs through the crowd. Amira stood beside Luis, who whispered, "It's like opening a time capsule from the future." She nodded, her eyes fixed on the object. "Or from the past," she said softly. The capsule was placed in a sterilized chamber, and cameras zoomed in on every detail. The markings along the side were clearer now, some in English, others in different languages, maybe from countries working together long ago. There was also a faded emblem barely visible, Helios 1. When the letters appeared on the screen, a hush fell over the room. Amira felt chills run through her body. She had heard that name before, Helios 1. It was one of humanity's most ambitious space missions, launched decades ago to explore the outer solar system. The mission had vanished without a trace. No one ever knew what happened to it. Until now, the scientists worked carefully to open the capsule. The air was tense. No one knew what they might find inside. Finally, after hours of slow, precise cutting, the chamber released a faint hiss like a sigh escaping from the past. Inside was a small container filled with glass tubes, metal chips, and something wrapped in protective foil. Amira leaned closer to the screen as one of the technicians slowly unwrapped it. Inside was a collection of data drives, old but surprisingly well preserved. They were covered with ice crystals but still readable. The team immediately began scanning them using special recovery tools. The room was silent except for the soft hum of computers. Minutes passed. Then a soft crackle of sound came through the speakers. Static at first, then a voice. It was faint, trembling, but human. "This is Helios 1. If anyone hears this, we need help." Gasps filled the room. Luis covered his mouth. Amira felt tears well up in her eyes. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't alien. It was human voices, people who had been lost in space calling out for help. The signal that had been named Alien SOS was actually the final message of humans who had vanished long ago. The recording continued in broken fragments. "We lost contact. Power is gone. Systems failing. We are too far to return, but maybe one day, someone will hear us." Then the voice stopped. Silence filled the room, heavier than ever before. Amira stepped forward, whispering, "They were calling for us all this time." Over the next few days, scientists carefully analyzed the data drives. They contained logs, video clips, and biological samples. Human DNA preserved in tiny glass vials. There were even short journal entries from the Helios 1 crew. Each message told a story of courage and fear. The ship had traveled beyond Mars, heading toward the edge of the solar system. But something went wrong. A system failure, a loss of fuel, and then silence. The crew knew they wouldn't survive, so they built a small capsule, loaded it with everything they could, and launched it toward Earth. It had drifted for decades before being caught in the moon's orbit, waiting to be found. Amira spent hours reading through the crew's words. One journal entry written by Captain Elias Ward said, "If this capsule reaches Earth, it means we were not forgotten. It means someone still listens. Tell them we believe the stars would remember us." Those words broke her. For months she had chased what she thought was an alien message, a sign from another world. But in truth it had been humanity's own echo returning home. The discovery spread across the globe like wildfire. News headlines read, "The alien SOS was human after all." People cried as they watched the recovered recordings of the lost crew. Their faces appeared on screens, young scientists, engineers, dreamers, smiling before their fatal journey. The world mourned them as heroes. Yet there was more inside the capsule than just recordings. The scientists discovered something extraordinary. Fragments of unknown data patterns that didn't match any known computer code from the time Helios 1 was launched. The structure was too complex, too advanced. Some experts suggested the crew might have developed it in space, improving their systems to survive longer. Others whispered something stranger, that perhaps before their end, the Helios 1 crew had found something out there that changed them. Amira didn't want to believe in theories without proof, but part of her couldn't stop wondering. The signal's precision, its strange layered code, it all felt like more than just human technology. Could the lost crew have made contact with someone else before they died? Could the message have been partly alien after all? She spent nights studying the deeper layers of the transmission, the parts that had not yet been decoded. The pulse pattern still repeated endlessly, but hidden inside were new variations, almost like a heartbeat slowing down. She began to see a rhythm that looked like DNA sequences. It was as if the message itself carried the memory of the people who had sent it. One evening, she played the last recovered video. It showed Captain Ward sitting in the dim cabin of Helios 1, his face pale, his eyes calm but tired. Behind him, the stars shimmered through the window. "If you are watching this," he said softly, "it means our hope reached you. We wanted to go further, to prove that humanity could live among the stars. We failed, but maybe our failure will teach you something. Maybe it will remind you that we are small, but we are never truly alone." The video ended. Amira sat still, her eyes wet. She imagined what those final days on Helios 1 must have been like. The silence, the cold, the fear. Yet even in that darkness, they had believed someone would one day hear them. That belief was what had kept them alive long enough to send their message. The discovery changed humanity forever. The story of Helios 1 became a symbol, not of alien contact, but of human perseverance. People began to see the stars differently. They no longer looked for others to save them. They looked for ways to honor those who had tried. Monuments were built in memory of the Helios 1 crew. Schools taught their story. The capsule itself was placed in a museum under heavy protection, displayed behind glass, still carrying traces of dust from space. But for Amira, the story wasn't finished. Late one night, she was in her office when she received a message from a researcher working in the data lab. "Dr. Solberg, you need to see this," the message said. She hurried down to the lab, her heart racing. The researcher showed her a new decoding of the final layer of the signal. It was faint but readable. Embedded deep within the transmission was a simple phrase written in English: "Don't stop listening." Amira stared at the words, her mind spinning. The message hadn't been just a goodbye. It was also a warning, or maybe a hope. The crew had wanted humanity to keep searching, to keep reaching out. She stepped outside that night, looking up at the sky. The stars above the Geneva skyline seemed to shine brighter than usual. Somewhere out there, Helios 1 had once drifted, carrying the voices of brave explorers who refused to be forgotten. Amira whispered into the cold night air, "We won't stop," and deep inside her heart, she felt something she hadn't felt since the first night the signal arrived, a quiet thrill of wonder. The universe was still full of secrets. The alien SOS had turned out to be a message from humanity's past, but maybe it was also a door to its future. The next morning, she wrote in her notebook, "The message wasn't from them. It was from us, to remind ourselves of who we are, to remind us that even in the endless darkness we send out light." She closed her eyes and smiled. The truth was no longer frightening. It was beautiful. Humanity hadn't just found an echo in the stars. It had found a reflection of its own soul. Years passed after the discovery of the Helios 1 capsule, but its echo continued to live in every corner of the world. The story of the alien SOS that turned out to be a message from lost humans had changed how people looked at the universe and at themselves. What had begun as a mystery from the stars had become a mirror reflecting the best and worst parts of humanity. Dr. Amira Solberg became a name known around the globe. Yet she never saw herself as a hero. She was quiet, humble, and still spent most of her days in the observatory. For her, the discovery was not the end of a story but the beginning of a question. What else was out there waiting to be heard? She often said to her students, "We spent centuries waiting for others to speak, but maybe the universe has been waiting for us to listen." The world had changed in surprising ways. After decades of rivalry and distrust, countries began to work together again. The discovery had reminded people that, compared to the vastness of space, humanity was one small family. Scientists launched new missions not for competition but for exploration. They called this new era the Age of Listening. In schools, children learned about the Helios 1 crew as heroes. Their faces appeared in textbooks beside great explorers of history. Students listened to the last recording, the trembling voice of Captain Elias Ward saying, "If anyone hears this, tell them we tried." Those words inspired millions to study space, science, and engineering. Humanity's forgotten dream had been reborn. But for Amira, the memory of that signal never faded. Every time she looked up at the night sky, she could still hear its faint rhythm in her mind, the repeating pulse that had once been mistaken for an alien voice. It was strange, almost comforting, like the heartbeat of the universe itself. One evening, Amira visited the museum where the Helios 1 capsule was displayed. It sat behind thick glass, shining softly under white lights. Tourists whispered as they walked around it, their reflections glowing on the glass. On the plaque below it were the words engraved from the capsule's surface, "Humanity will remember." She stood there for a long time, remembering everything. The night she first heard the signal, the endless hours of decoding, the fear, the hope, the discovery. Luis, who now worked as a lead engineer for Project Echo, walked up beside her. "It still feels unreal, doesn't it?" he said. Amira smiled faintly. "Sometimes I wonder if they knew how much they would change us," she replied. "Those voices from the dark, They made us remember who we are. Luis nodded. They reminded us we're all part of something bigger. As they stood there, Amira noticed a group of schoolchildren staring at the capsule with wide eyes. Their teacher was explaining how the lost crew had sent a message across time. One little girl raised her hand and asked, "Do you think they can hear us now?" The teacher smiled. "Maybe they can." Amira's heart softened. She realized that even if the Helios 1 crew was gone, their story would never truly die. It had become part of humanity's identity, proof that courage and hope could outlast even death and distance. Later that night, Amira returned to her observatory. The building was quiet, filled only with the hum of machines. She sat down at her desk, opened her computer, and began to review new data from deep space. Humanity had built more powerful telescopes since the Helios discovery, capable of listening to faint signals from the edges of the galaxy. Hours passed. The desert outside was silent, painted silver by moonlight. Amira sipped her coffee and stared at a series of graphs moving across her screen. Then something caught her attention, a small pulse, faint and rhythmic. For a moment her heart stopped. It wasn't noise. It had a pattern. She quickly ran it through her filters, comparing it to the Helios 1 signal. The result came back negative. This one was different. But the structure, the rhythm, felt strangely familiar. She zoomed in, watching the line rise and fall like a heartbeat. Then she smiled to herself. It wasn't strong enough to decode yet, but it was there. Another voice, faint but real, waiting to be heard. She leaned back in her chair and whispered, "You were right. Captain Ward, we just had to keep listening." The next morning, she shared the discovery with her team. News of the faint new signal spread quickly, but this time the world didn't panic. There were no riots, no wild theories, no fear. People were excited, curious, hopeful. The story of Helios 1 had taught them something important, that not every unknown sound meant danger. Sometimes it meant connection. Project Echo reopened its full operations. Scientists from all around the world gathered again, working side by side just as they had years before. This time their mission was clear, to keep listening not for aliens or miracles but for understanding. They called the new program the Continuum Project, a name that meant the search would never stop. Amira became the head of the project, though she never acted like a leader. She preferred sitting among the younger scientists, asking questions, guiding them, and reminding them that discovery wasn't about fame, it was about curiosity. She often said, "The universe doesn't speak in words. It speaks in patience." Years went by. Humanity made progress in ways no one had imagined. They developed technology that allowed them to travel farther, listen deeper, and communicate faster. The Helios 1 story had inspired generations of explorers. Statues of the lost crew stood in cities around the world. Every year, on the date the signal was first received, people gathered under the stars for a global event called the Night of the Echo. They turned off lights, stayed silent for 1 minute, and looked up, a tribute to those who had once called out across space. Amira always attended, though she stayed in the background, sitting quietly on a bench. She liked watching people. Children pointing at the stars, old couples holding hands, teenagers whispering about space travel. The sight made her heart full. Humanity had learned something precious, that the universe wasn't just about finding others, it was about finding themselves. When Amira grew older, she spent less time in the observatory and more time writing. She wrote about the early days of the signal, the sleepless nights, and the moment they realized it was human. Her final book, Echoes of Ourselves, became famous worldwide. In it, she wrote, "We were never waiting for them. We were waiting for ourselves." The signal wasn't a call from strangers. It was our own reflection, teaching us to listen. She finished the book one quiet evening in the observatory, just as the sun set behind the desert hills. The sky turned orange, then deep blue, and the first stars began to appear. She looked at them through the glass dome, smiling softly. Somewhere out there in the vast ocean of space, Helios 1's final echo was still traveling, passing by distant worlds, carrying the memory of humanity's courage. A few months later, when Amira passed away peacefully in her sleep, the world mourned her like a queen of the stars. Her ashes were taken into space aboard a small capsule, launched into the same orbit where the Helios 1 message had once been found. The capsule carried a simple engraving on her words, "Don't stop listening." When it reached orbit, it released a soft pulse, A single signal repeating slowly across space, just like the one she had discovered decades earlier. Astronomers all over the world recorded it. The pulse was made of two simple tones that translated into binary code. When decoded, it spelled one word: remember. The message traveled outward, joining the endless hum of the universe. People around the world stood outside that night watching the stars, knowing that part of Amira was now among them, a new voice in the cosmic silence. Years later, a group of young scientists in the Continuum Project discovered a small, faint response coming from deep space. It was too weak to understand, just a gentle rhythm that sounded almost like a reply. No one knew if it was natural or artificial, but no one cared. It was enough to make them believe that maybe, just maybe, the universe was finally answering. And so humanity kept listening. The story of the alien SOS, which had once filled people with fear, had become a story of hope. It reminded everyone that even in the cold emptiness of space, human voices could still find their way home. In the end, it wasn't about aliens or technology or discovery. It was about connection, about the unbreakable thread that linked every person, every planet, every star, somewhere far beyond the edge of what anyone could see. The signals of Helios 1, Amira Solberg, and 1,000 other voices drifted through the stars, whispering the same timeless message: we are here, we remember, and we will keep listening.